So, okay, thank you so much for coming. After a long time, I'm really presenting in the hall, so it feels more real. In the virtual things, it's more like you're talking to a computer. It doesn't give a good feeling. So, thank you so much for coming over. And I'm Pryia Saxena. I'm a cloud architect at Google, and I have been working more or less with networking and security for almost 18 years. But recently, last 3 years, I have jumped into API management. So my role is not to do the coding for the proxies itself. I do that partially, but my main role is to safeguard your API management solution itself, and what kind of security, what kind of network scalability, what other things can you put in to make that, because end of the day, API servicing, like for example, scaling and protecting shouldn't be an API developer's job only. Of course, developers do a lot in the code to protect it, but it should be also protected from outside, that nobody can attack your servers. So my role is mainly with the FSI customers, with big banks. I've been doing it with a lot of financial institutions. And my role is to protect their API management solution itself, so that that's scalable, that's protected, that has all the related things which an API developer need not worry about. So it's more of, if you are API developers, how many of you are developers here? And how many of you are platform members? The security networking, okay. It's for knowledge, at least for developers to get more inspired that your APIs are safe, and for you guys to get some related points which you can improve on. With me, I have my co-speaker.
And I'm Saakshi Saxena. I'm a computer science master's student at Queen Mary. I'm also vice president of AI and Robotics Society at my university. And I've been doing intense research into API for a couple of years now.
Okay, so the reason is we thought we'll have a basics from basics. So she's definitely a master's graduate. I have had some experience. So we thought we'll cover from the basics and take you gradually to some of the designs which are deployed in enterprise customers. So this session will be a combination of starting from the basics, which might be a repeat for some of you, and then diving deep into it. And at the end, we'll leave you with some real good pointers on where you can find more information. 20 minutes is not at all justified for this topic. So we'll try our best to give you a crisp information of what it is and then take you from there. Okay.
In this session, we're going to go a bit beyond API management. We're going to get a 360-degree view of API ecosystem. Technology is moving very fast. It's difficult to separate one domain from another. So the better that you know about the overlapping areas, the better it is while designing a network. We're going to talk about network, but mainly security. API management does cover API security, but we're going to see how we can add layers to that. Because as experts say, the more the layers, the better it is. We're also going to look at the AI side of Google Cloud. Of course, you can compare it to your providers or vendors. We're also going to look at multi-cloud. It's getting very important because, for example, I have my internet provider, and I do not want to be stuck to the same provider for life. I want to have a choice of exploring different options, going out and changing the provider. Similar with cloud. So Google Cloud, APG also has a lot of features for doing multi-cloud. And
so yeah, so to her point, the thing is this session is not about Google Cloud, it's not about APG. But we will be using most of the examples from what we do, but you can relate it to any other cloud provider, whatever you're using, whichever API management solution you're using. Same principles can be applied in some form or the other. So with respect to that, like multi-cloud, the main point today is you don't want to lock into one vendor. My mobile phone, I don't want to get stuck to say Vodafone or T-Mobile or something for life. So there is a bit of flexibility that the products should be capable of, say, deploying in a different cloud, in a different place, yet you don't have to rewrite the whole application. So with that, we also cover a part of performance and reliability. Say Black Friday. I freak out sometimes. It's like Black Friday, Cyber Monday. It's good, exciting, but what about my servers? They'll be overloaded. So those are the times when our design is tested to the, it's like a stress test for our design. So those are the things, the reliability part, multi-regional deployment part, the performance part. It doesn't matter every day, but on those peak days, you don't want to lose your midnight sleep because your servers are down. So we will be covering a bit of what can be done in Google Cloud to do that, but yet those concepts are applicable everywhere. Every product will have some kind of alternative to that. And so going with the cloud security. Now, every time I go to a customer, my first few sessions are all about security because that is so core. Your APIs are getting exposed to the wild internet, most of the APIs, right? And we shouldn't be having that, double thing in mind that, oh, what if some hacker does it? What if there's a DDoS attack? So that's the reason we always suggest better to have multiple layers of security. The more layers of security you have, because again, this is a very famous saying, I don't like it, but that's true. A security advisor will have to win every time. A hacker will only have to win once. So it's one instance where your security goes down, your systems go down. So with security, with respect to, say, Google Cloud, there are a lot of things which you can utilize, and we suggest have as much as, of course, depending on your budget, what all can you use, but have as much as possible. Say, for example, Cloud Armor. Whenever you have an API exposed outside, it's better to have a WAF solution. It can be Cloud Armor, it can be any other solution as well, but better have those rules in place. Then again, IAM management. You don't want your different team. I have 2 teams in my company. I don't want them to commit into my code or me to commit into their code. So have your IAM cloud identity right in place, the roles assigned. Your API developers will have different roles. Your API administrators, the platform people will have different roles. So the more you emphasize on what roles are defined, say what should data analytics guys do, what your API programmers will do, what your users will be accessing to. So all these are the things you have to determine beforehand and apply correct role to what shouldn't be, because it can happen even by mistake that somebody else is not authorized to do it, but they are doing. So IAM rules are again very important. VPCSC service controls, this is something which I can't emphasize more on it. This is one concept wherein you place a perimeter around your resources, be it compute instance, be it Kubernetes clusters, whatever it is, you place it in a perimeter so that even by mistake, things are not exfiltrated. Say somebody, I might do it myself, just copy something, paste it by mistake, or download something by mistake. So when, especially with these finance institutions, I feel even unintentional mistakes are not acceptable. So that's the reason we really emphasize have service controls, have perimeters around your API management solution. Then coming reCAPTCHA, a lot of bot algorithms, bot detection, and I think Google is doing really good in AI, ML, and these kind of scenarios. So make use of the reCAPTCHA algorithms we have, that will make fraud detection easier for you. And then data loss prevention. Now, this is again something which is very critical, especially with European companies. We have a lot of compliance issues with GDPR, with data sensitive data. So if you use the cloud DLP, so you can mask that sensitive data so that it doesn't go even in the database somewhere. And then finally CMAC. So most of the time I feel that somehow when companies are moving from on-premise or their own servers to cloud, they feel we are losing that control. You're actually not losing the control. Because like for example, CMAC, you have customer managed encryption keys. Even as a Googler, I can't see any of those. It's definitely managed by the customer. So there's nothing that control is getting lost. So please make use of these things to make your API management solution secure. And then coming AI-powered automation. Now there was this research done with the state of API economy. There was in 2021 report, there is 230% increase in the usage of AI detection algorithms for API management. So all the enterprises, 230% is really huge, year-on-year increase. So last year it was really record high, and I would say use these anomaly detection algorithms, the peak traffic, like Black Friday I say Cyber Mondays. You never know how many users will log in at the same time. You can estimate, but with these algorithms, you just provide them historic data. They give you what is it needed, how much do you have to scale, so that you don't have to run into that situation. Last year's data will be used to predict it. Anomaly detection, bot fraud detection, all these are you can find these in-depth information on the websites as well. And again, with other providers as well, I'm sure you'll have something of this sort. Make use of these kind of algorithms. Then coming to high performance and reliability. So this is again Google specific, but again it will be applicable to everyone. So for example, you don't want your server to respond back after 2 seconds or 3 seconds. Even that is like a latency time. You want it as soon as possible. So there are a lot of locations, say more than 100 locations of choice. There are 35 regions where you can deploy. And always say there are some geographies which have a restriction of you need to have your data in the same geography. You can't take it out, you can't store it somewhere else. So that's the reason all these cloud providers are having multiple regions so that you have a choice whether you want to store a data in Belgium, in London, in India, wherever you want to store. So regions wise, make use of the multiple regions, make use of the cloud CDN. And again, more than 100 locations, and there are a lot of edge locations. So increased caching, less latency, These are all the features you'll be happy with. And again, with hybrid architecture. Now I'll say API management system, if it is only SaaS, only in the cloud, there are some instances where I have seen that customers say it is still long latency time for us. Even if it is certain milliseconds, it is still a long latency. Your backends are somewhere on premise, your management software is in the cloud. So with APG, and I'm sure you'll have different products as well, with APG we have a hybrid option as well. If you're worried about that latency, if you really have, for compliance reasons, you have to retain the runtime in your control plane, then you can also deploy the data plane in your premises. So that's a good option for hybrid and even multi-cloud. So with that, I'll quickly take you through, sorry, we started a little late, that's why I have to rush through it. So I'll take you through one of the, we have many such patterns, they are all available online. If not, we are even sharing it in open source now, the coding. So with this particular session, I'll show you a sample deployment of an internet-facing application trying to access your backends. Say, for example, if you see here on the left side, it is the consumer application, and on the right side is your actual backend server. In between, you have this API management. For me, it is APG runtime here. And with APG runtime, again, nobody can just access your management software. It doesn't have a public IP point. It doesn't have anything which is exposed to the wild internet. Before that, you have this gray box where you can configure all these things which I told you beforehand, before even somebody reaches your API management software servers itself. So by default, it is totally isolated, but there is a concept in Google Cloud called network peering. Now with this particular concept, you can access, these networks can access, send traffic and receive traffic from the both the isolated networks. That's like a bridge, it joins through. And if you see in detail here, internally inside APG API management itself, you have a load balancer, internal load balancer, you have connectivity to the back end, and then from your network peering, your front end, your front part of the project, the Google project, can be configured to send messages there after those all security measures, all these things which we have shown you earlier. So say for instance here, I'm connected from say a mobile user from the consumer side. He wants to connect through an API, he sends an API request. Now that request first goes through an external load balancer. Now this load balancer, by default, Google Stack itself has DDoS protection. So it is really advised that you place something like this on an internet-facing edge. So once it goes through the load balancer, the Cloud Armor rules are applied there, WAF protection is done there, and then it goes to an internal bridge. From there, going through APG with all your spike arrest, whatever traffic controls you have, security controls, to the backend. So this is a typical structure with one regional deployment. If you have two regions, it's like two replicas of the same thing. So this is something like a reference architecture which we propose for multiple layers of security. And yeah, again, the public IP is only there. There's nothing else exposed. So once the user crosses that particular load balancer, it goes to the inner network, which we can consider it's now safe. The call is safe, that's why we are allowing it. Network bridge, again, it is something to bridge between your two networks which are isolated. Again, you can have your MTLS termination here. You can configure your certificates. That's another layer of security which you can do here. So finally, the process is like if it is an internal workload, like the bottom one here, then you don't need all these layers of security. You can just access. Internal employees can access directly. But especially for an internet-facing application, we recommend all these layers of security. And again, it depends on really what is your requirement. If your requirement is multi-regional deployment, there are different patterns which you can use. But in general, this is like the pattern most commonly used. But now it is changing a little. So with new features coming in, PSC Service Connect coming in, there are a lot of new features added. So if it was, if you really want to get updated information, maybe go to the websites. That's a better case. So with this one, yeah, that's the flow I explained. I think I'm out of time. So this is the one which we want to leave you with. Yeah.
So this is the Google repository. If I can quickly take you through it.
No, do that. So,
Go.
Yeah.
So on this repository, if you go here and go to the samples, you'll see there are many ready-to-deploy scripts that you can download and run through your computer. These are maintained and contributed by Google.
Yeah. We wanted to show you the repository actually. We are not connected. Okay, we are running out of time. So maybe we'll just describe it here. So these are the Terraform modules which we created, because all those one architecture which I showed you, there are many more architectures which it's a readily available script and it's been contributed by Googlers. We maintain it and even community members contribute to it. So make use of those. You can just run the scripts, provide the parameters. There are detailed README files as well there. Sorry, we couldn't show you that. But please go to that URL and you'll find a lot of explanation there. And you can basically use many of those repeatable patterns which we have found out. For if you are just getting started with API management security, use one of those. You'll have everything described in the pages itself. Yeah. So you can use that and try out deploying all these things. It's really secure. I think we'll open up to the questions. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this. One quick question was around when customers are actually deploying across multiple cloud vendors outside of Google's perspective, what additional security measures would you recommend for somebody who is actually in the role of developing an API, but
Yeah.
also, let's say, testing some of the things,
Yeah.
benchmarking against the industry standard?
Yeah, so the question is that if in case of multi-cloud, what kind of additional security do we have to recommend? So I would say, out of experience, most of these, especially with banks, they would like to connect their workloads through the on-premise controls. They have a lot of on-premise controls, so I wouldn't say that is the recommended part. It can either, from Google Cloud, say for example, AWS or Azure, you want to connect to those clusters. You can directly as well use your whatever VPN interconnects, whatever you have. But most of the time, enterprises prefer going through their on-premise control system. That is advisable for two reasons. One is they already have everything in place, their firewall rules, their whatever security they have. And the second thing is it is good to track the traffic between these two clouds. So again, it really depends. If you have latency problems, you don't want to go through multiple hops, then there are both type of patterns. So, but yeah, security-wise, again, the other cloud provider will also have a lot of security appliances. So make use of that or your on-premise appliances, whatever you have. Name, anything else? Oh yeah.
You talked about multi-layers of security, and this is not a question, but obviously all of those layers over layer 3, layer 4 level protection, plus you add the say MAPLS or certificate level protection, as well as then we should also be looking at layer 7, which is more at the application level.
Yeah.
So anything that Google kind of recommends from a pattern?
Yeah. Well, I can't say what, the question is that what is the best practice for adding multiple layers of security even at an application layer. So I will not say what Google suggests because my colleague might suggest something which is a little different to what I'm suggesting. But again, what I would say is what I've seen in my experience. If you see this network bridge here, most of the customers also deploy their, say for example, Nginx server. I'm not saying you do that only, but for example, they do deploy a lot of software in that network bridge to be able to manage the certificate termination. And if you see here, this is actually a layer 7 external load balancer. So, and again, Google stack, internal stack, if you go through Andromeda, which is there are a lot of papers on that, internal stack itself handles a lot of DDoS protection by default. It may not be written on the web pages clearly, but if you see a lot of protection at a lower level, like layer 3 and even lower level layers, that is done itself by the stack itself. So there are many things which come to us without we configuring it. Security is very deep emphasized in Google, a very deep thing. So other than that, like I said, L7 load balancer is there, and there is this VM bridge which you can use for any additional software which you want to set up for security. But this should be enough, to be honest. If you have those 2 layers, that should be enough. Yeah. Any other question? Yeah, thank you so much.